Leave It To Beaver. Starring Jerry Mathers as the Beaver.
Hello, everybody. This is Brian Nelson Jr., the admin for the Leave It To Beaver fan club on Facebook. And I also run the new Leave It To Beaver, Still the Beaver fan page on Facebook. That show was done in the 1980s, and it brought back the Cleavers in the 1980s as parents. Beaver had 2 sons, and Wally had a daughter and then later a son. So if you haven't joined that group, feel free to take a look and join and learn more about the show. Jerry Mathers is with us today. He has granted us some time to do an interview exclusively for the group. I also have Maria Shaw, who is a moderator of a group. So please sit back and enjoy the conversation.
Hello.
Hello, Jerry. How are you?
Couldn't be better. How you doing?
Pretty good. You mentioned in your interview that the archive of the American television, that the main cast interviewed each other ahead of the 50th anniversary.
Well, the remaining cast, all the people that were
right.
we were able to have back.
Were these interviews published, or how can they be accessed?
They were done by Universal. I don't think that was before YouTube. So they're probably in some archive vault someplace.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know where that would be. I mean, I imagine it'd be someplace on the Universal lot. Because, there's like the Leave It To Beaver, the new Leave It To Beaver, and a lot of different things that, every once in a while somebody would, they'd say, well, if you do an interview, send it to us because we might want to show it to the sponsors or play it for the sponsors to make sure that, something got mentioned or something like that. So, but I wouldn't have the foggiest, to be honest with you.
When, if ever, did you become aware of the magnitude of the type of, did you have any pressure as being the main character of the show?
No, honestly, I wasn't the main character. I mean, it was definitely an ensemble cast. I mean, everybody, the show was Leave It To Beaver, but, Wally was just as important, and June and Ward. It was, because it was through my perspective, I had a lot more to do in the show, but we were all equal as far as making it popular.
That was the one thing about that show. It was actually the first of its kind, because you see later on, like Donna Reed was kind of through the kids. But yeah, Leave It To Beaver was the first deal as far as
right,
being...
that was the original concept, was to do, the world through the innocent eyes of a child, and how they viewed the world, and how, like, your parents tell you one thing and then all of a sudden they may come back, but, in this circumstance, do something else, or, other people that you would think would do the right thing don't. And, there's always people like Eddie Haskell that always do the wrong thing.
I got to tell you, I grew up with a buddy just like Eddie Haskell. And
oh, you poor fellow.
I know. And, it was kind of funny because I always viewed myself as, the Beaver character, the one that was always finding trouble through other friends. I mean, I was always the innocent one, but I never did, I probably didn't fall for as much as Beaver did, but, and then
you didn't need 39 episodes a year.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. But yeah, then I had the buddy who was exactly like Eddie Haskell. He was behind closed doors, he was kind of a rat, so to speak. And yeah, then once the parents were around, it was, oh, how you doing, Mrs., and whoever it was at the time. So yeah, he was very much like that.
Well, that's the wonderful part about Leave It To Beaver is, in fact, I have people tell me that most of the characters on the show everybody knows, but everybody does know an Eddie Haskell. A lot of people know a Lumpy. And Beaver's friends, Richard and Whitey, and everybody says, I had a friend just like that in high school, junior high, college, or, at my work. But I think Eddie is the one that pops up the most because those are the ones you remember the most. The other people are nice people, so you just kind of say, oh, he was a nice guy, but there's nobody like Eddie.
No, and the one thing, and Ken has said this several times, is that Eddie wasn't a bad kid. Which, same thing with my buddy. He had, it was his home life kind of shaped his personality. He put on a face, and he wanted to appear to be something that was stronger than what he really was. So he always said he wasn't a bad kid. He was just putting a mask on. He was always a good natured person by nature.
Well, I think that's somewhat true, but I think Eddie in some ways was kind of a bully. He was, he couldn't really communicate well or get along well with people his own age, and so he liked to bully in some ways the beaver and his friends, and try to lead them into things and do things. So he's a great character, but it's just one of the people that you meet in life. There are a lot of people like Lumpy. There are hopefully you have a lot of great people like Wally, who's the perfect big brother, and the beaver's kind of an innocent, and he doesn't realize the traps that the world sets for you as you grow up in life, and it really depends on who you choose as your friends.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I had a brother, I still do. But yeah, he was my older brother, and we did everything together. He wasn't an athlete like Wally was, but yeah, we did everything together. I have younger siblings, so I always say that I had the role of both. I had the role of the older brother of the Wally. I have the role of the younger brother, Beaver. So yeah, and I have a lot more younger siblings than I do older siblings. So
you have a lot more challenges then.
Yeah, exactly. So when you were picked on the dating game, did you actually go to London with your date?
I did, but it wasn't weird, but it was kind of a complication. Is that she had actually lied. And so you had to be, I can't remember whether it was 18, I think it was, and she wasn't. She was only like 17. But somehow she took a sister's or somebody's, some kind of ID. And then when they went to send us, it turned into a huge problem, because sending a minor to Europe, without her parents, because she had said they didn't send the parents. They always sent you with what they called a chaperone, but it was just some person that, basically set up different things for you to do. So it turned out to be not a hassle, but it was just a lot harder than going on just a regular one of those kind of shows.
So you ended up going, but she needed to bring somebody with?
Well, they not only did she have to bring in somebody with her, but they had to have an extra chaperone. And there was just we couldn't go to a lot of when we went to London, there were a lot of places that they had us going to, like nightclubs and things like that, and she wasn't allowed in a lot of them. So it made it a lot harder to, make it. When you after you win, they say, and you're going here, and you're going there, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and a lot of those things, because of her age, she couldn't participate in.
So much for a date, and making it sound like you win a date with Jerry, but you have all these other staff going with you and entourage, it sounds like.
Oh, well, no, actually it was just one person, but, it was just, she had to be in by a certain time, and there were just a lot of extra requirements because she was a minor. But, she didn't look it. She looked like she was probably 21, in her 20s, but she was definitely not. She was only, I can't remember exactly how old she was. I don't even think she was over 18. So she just looked a lot older, and she had lied to him when she took the, I don't know why they didn't ask for a driver's license or something. Maybe she took a sister's. I don't know, because that wasn't part of it that I was involved in. But as soon as they saw her passport, when they went to buy her tickets and found out she was underage, they had a big problem, because they had said, she's going to Europe and da-da-da-da-da. And now it made for quite a thing that she was underage.
Jerry, if all of these questions sound random and they don't follow a particular path or order, is because these are the fan club members.
You know what? That doesn't bother me. I have answers for everything.
All righty. Go ahead, Brian.
I always found it real ironic that Chewy was also on that show. Barry Gordon was on the dating game on that same episode as you were.
Yes, that was the the thing that you did at that time. by the time we were on the dating game, I think it had been on for at least several years, and I don't even know how many. So they were looking for new people that were on shows, and so that's why we were lucky enough to. And you'll see when that time frame of the show comes on, you'll see a lot younger actors, because that show went on for I think like 10 or 15 years. It was on for a long, long time.
What do you consider most important, and what are you most proud? What your most proudest achievement is throughout the series, outside of the series?
Outside of the series, probably going to Berkeley and graduating from Berkeley. That was, always something that was very. My dad was a superintendent at LA City Schools, and so it was education was always something I wanted to do. I had a great education because, it's basically the education of the kings and queens of Europe. I had a private tutor from the 1st till the 8th grade. I was lucky enough then to be able to go to a regular high school, so I played on the football team and got into sports. But because of my elementary school, they thought I might have problems getting into a college. And so I went and took the test, and luckily I was accepted. So I did have to go to a junior college to make up a few credits, but I did end up at Berkeley, and I have a degree in philosophy from Berkeley.
And that's pretty impressive in itself, because then you spend you spend all your childhood in grade school, grammar school, all the way in studio school, at the studio. But
right.
then you go to high school, public school. So
no, actually, it was a private. I'm not. I just don't want to interrupt you. I don't want you to get it wrong. I did go to a private high school.
Oh, okay.
And I would have gone to a public high school, except my dad, who retired as superintendent of LA City Schools, started out at a private high school, and so I'd been going to their games and things like football and baseball and basketball games since I was 2 years old. And so even when I was on Leave It To Beaver, a lot of times on weekends and things, we would go to Notre Dame's different events. He didn't work there anymore because he moved on to the LA City School system. But so I had always wanted to go to Notre Dame because I'd been there as a child. So I went to Notre Dame High School, which was a private high school.
Oh, okay. But that was outside of the studio.
Outside the studio system, yeah.
Right. Oh, okay. Excuse me. Did you ever have a boyhood crush on Karen Sue Trent? Maybe Jerry Weil?
Not really. They were good friends of mine, but it wasn't like, I didn't really see them all that often. They would come in and they would work, but they might only be there for 1 or 2 days out of maybe a 3 or 4 month period, because we'd film a show a week, and if they weren't in the next week's show, they wouldn't be there. And if they had a smaller part, they probably would only come in for that day of their part. So I might only see them once a month, or maybe once every several months for some of them.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. The two snooty girls. That was another one that I had in my class. It was which was kind of ironic. Her name was Melissa, and
okay.
and in the new series, one of the girls that gave Oliver issues, or was the snooty one in the class, her name was Melissa Hensler, which kind of led you to believe that Judy might have had a brother.
It's always possible. You never know.
It's stuff like that. Where's Mayfield? Where did Ward go to work? There's no official answer to that. I always play it as, I put him over here, or Ward did this. I made a conclusion that it went, that Ward's occupation was uncovered or unveiled during the new series because Lumpy had used words like escrow accounts and, things like that. So then you get that idea. But, again, there's no real answer to it. So you just make up your own answers.
And the reason for that is because they never knew if a show might come up where they wanted to say he did something. So they didn't want to put themselves in a box where if a really good show came up from somebody that wrote it, they might say, "Oh, well, but Ward would have to be doing this for a living for us to do this show." So that was the reason. It wasn't that they were trying to make it a big secret for any reason.
Right, exactly. That's exactly it. Your guest appearance on Married with Children was priceless. Can you speak?
Well, thank you.
Yeah, I loved it. It was on actually right around the time that the new show was in progress or ended, somewheres in that era. Can you speak about how you got that film? Were you approached? Did you do any improv?
Definitely. No, they called up my agent. I think it was right after the new Leave It to Beaver, but it's been quite a while back, and it could have been, during maybe the first season or so. But like a lot of things, that one happens to rerun a lot, so people remember it. But I did not a lot, but quite a bit of work during that time on different shows and a lot of talk shows, and I was going all around the country speaking about diabetes, and so I did a lot of live interviews and things like that. So I was doing a lot of things, but a lot of them weren't like Leave It to Beaver that's been on all that time. So people say, "Well, how did you disappear?" Well, what didn't disappear? I just wasn't doing things in their neighborhood.
Yeah, the one thing I loved that I didn't really watch that show all that much, but that one caught my attention, and
okay.
I thought it was cool because it showed it expanded your acting ability. I thought it was it was playing yourself, obviously in an animated way, and it was it expanded. It showed a lot of your acting range.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, people don't realize that I did the Beaver, but I played a lot of other characters both before and after. So Leave It to Beaver, though, because it plays every day since 1957, people think, well, that's him. It's like Marilyn Monroe. She's just one person, and this is who she is, and that's what she does. I've done a lot. I've been everything from a bad guy to a good guy to a middle of the road guy.
Did you do any improv in that episode?
Not very much. That's pretty much written, and they're very, very good writers. And every once in a while they come up and they, on different shows, they ask you, "Was there anything else you changed?" And we might talk about something. On that show, I don't really remember if we did or not. But you always read the script beforehand, and you go in and talk with them, and that's the one nice thing. Everyone wants to make sure you're comfortable, and there's nothing that you're not embarrassed about, but anything you'd feel odd about, they can always change it because it's not like it's that big a deal before but once it's on tape or on film, that's it. It's out there forever.
You also did an appearance on a show called Phenom, which only lasted, I think, maybe a season, which was a really cool show. I'm sorry it didn't go any longer, but that one also showed. In fact, the theme of that show, I forget, what the exact storyline of the show was, but one of the kids, they went on a screen filming or a test film where they go and they look at the actual episode of a show, and then they grade it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he goes in there and he's like, he sees you in the episode, and he was like, "I don't think this is right. I don't." So then you kept on stalking him and going after him, and which again, and because he was like, "I don't think Jerry. He's the Beaver. I don't think that I can't buy him as what the character was. You were like a guy that was."
See, the problem there is that I'm an actor, so they think that just because you play one part, that you aren't versatile enough to move out into other parts. And as an actor, that's really fun because I've been bad guys, I've been good guys. I've done a whole lot of different things besides, Leave It to Beaver. So they get stuck in that they've watched it, and it has to be that same person. It's like a friend of yours. You don't expect a friend of yours to change, but as an actor, what they don't understand is it's not really me. All those are, characters that I've developed for that particular show. And when I step out of that show, I come back to being me and not the Beaver or any of the other characters. Because I've portrayed a lot of kids that are, had real mental problems. I've portrayed all sorts of kids, in different shows that I've done. But they're not me. They're characters that I've developed because of the particular script and how the director and the producers wanted that character to behave.
Right, exactly. And that's what that episode was saying. It was saying, it was highlighting your acting ability, because the guy was like, you were behind a two-way mirror and you were viewing their critiques. So then you knew what he said, and then you left.
I'm sorry,
And
Brian. Can I
sorry.
interrupt? For the fans who will be listening to this and didn't catch, what was the name of that show that you're referencing?
It's called Phenom, like a phenomenon, but it's
Okay,
shortened.
gotcha.
Correct.
Carry on.
So anyways, so in that episode, he's thinking, okay, yeah, you're the beaver. I would never believe him. And then he was like, you were like this, you adopted foster children, something like that. So then you chased him down because you saw his critique, and he was seeing you stalking him, and he was getting a little scared. So then you tracked him down, and you finally got to him, and you went into an act, and you showed him your acting ability, and you were being a bad guy, and you were like going to come after him. And then all of a sudden, the mom comes in. Then you went into a beaver character, like, oh, I'm
Sounds
sorry.
like an Eddie Haskell.
Yeah, well, kind of, because you were like, oh, I'm sorry, Mrs. Doolin. I didn't mean any harm.
Exactly like Eddie Haskell.
Exactly. It was a great episode. I'm sorry it only went one season because it was really good. So now finding that episode is very hard now. But yeah, so yeah, that was a good one.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So can you believe that there's been so many of us that hold, that cherish your memories? How do you feel about the fan site?
Well, it's really nice, and it's something I'm very proud of, and I'm glad that people recognize that it's such a good show. I mean, I know a lot of people say, I wish it was in color, or I wish it was this or that, but it was just a very, very good show for its time, and it stood the test of time. And, every show has, in some ways, a little moral. If you do the right things will happen to you. When you do something that's not, you're going to pay consequences. And it's just the story of a little boy growing up in the United States of America. It's in the 50s, but I think basically it could be any time. I mean, it's a lot more complicated in some ways today for kids because of the internet and a lot of more things that they're exposed to. But, kids have always had the same things growing up. There's always challenges and people that you don't want to really have as friends, like Eddie Haskell, and people that you do, like Gus the Fireman.
Gus the Fireman, excuse me, is iconic. There was, I believe, three different firemen that were in the series. Gus was the main one.
That's because they were all great character actors, and they'd be working on other shows, and they'd write the script, call them up to come over and work, and they'd say, oh, no, I'm on this show for a week or two. So whenever we could, though, we got Bert, who was
Bert Mustin.
Yeah, Bert Mustin, who was a really good one. But at other times he was working, and I can't remember even, maybe married. I don't even remember what shows he was working on. But he wasn't one of the every week actors. But we'd call him up, and the show had been written, so they had some other people also play fireman parts.
Yeah, he was definitely iconic. I remember seeing him on The Tonight Show, and a couple of times, actually. And the last time that he appeared was, I think, the year that he passed away, and he was a bit forgetful, because I remember Johnny was asking him a question, and he was giving him an answer, and then all of a sudden he forgot, and they went to commercial, and that was it. But yeah, he's definitely, I mean, he's up there with Richard Deacon. He's been in several.
They were all really good people. He was really interesting though, because he had been a salesman all his life, and then retired, and was just a very active person. And that's why he got into little theater and thought, oh, maybe I could be an actor, and went on to that. So, and they were all people like that. So it wasn't like people always say, oh, I never saw him. How come he was so big on Leave It to Beaver? But I never saw him as a young actor. He was never a young actor.
He started, I think the age that he started was like 73 or 74 years old.
I would agree with you. I don't know exactly what it was, but I know he was up there. I know he was at least in his 70s.
Do you look in on our fan page often? What are your thoughts on that?
I like it very much. My wife and I peruse it all the time, and we The only bad thing is you never make any mistakes. We have nothing to tell you about. If you made a big mistake, you do a very, very good job.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. We have a good team, and a lot of our fans help out with a lot of stuff. So, obviously, Maria and we're fairly knowledgeable. But yeah, feel free if anything pops up wrong. Feel free to chime in and let us know.
Oh, don't worry. I will.
It's a good time to jump in for me and get a controversy, become more controversial even.
Go ahead.
Make a controversy greater. We are debating. Everybody has their own opinion. We want to hear yours.
I have the final say, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah. The Leave It To Beaver fan club is a house divided when it comes to colorization, colorizing the episodes. Some people say, leave this intact. This is a work of art. Television and filming is a work of art. It was originally in black and white. That's how it should remain forever and evermore. There's another group of us who says, we're not saying turn it all into color, but show some, like, I understand that the Dick Van Dyke Show has a Christmas every year. On Christmas, they air a colorized show. And I believe I Love Lucy just does this as well.
You know what? My feeling is that you give people what they want. So I think that there should be both. If somebody would if they wanted to make like a DVD collection or even put it on the air, if they had some in color and some in black and white. The only reason we didn't do color at that time was because it took a lot longer, and because they were working with kids, they didn't really have that much time, because to light a color set is a lot harder than to light a black and white set. And so they just went, and a lot of shows at that time, color was just coming in 1957. By the end, color was, a lot more of a staple, but we'd already had 6 years and 234 episodes. But it wouldn't bother me if they wanted to make it color. If somebody thinks that, they'll see us in color and it'll make their day, that wouldn't bother me, as long as they did have the option of watching it in black and white somewhere if they wanted. I think the funny part would be getting all the colors right, like all our eyes, and are our eyes brown, are our eyes green, are our eyes blue?
Exactly.
Who really knows? So,
Beaver's cap better get it right. Green
that's
cap.
Right. The green cap that would have to be, and that's the interesting story too, because the first day we started the show, it was not winter, but it was fall, and it was raining, and my mom knew that when we went in to shoot the very first day, that my hair was wet. The hairman would have had to dry it, and it would have been a whole big hassle. So she just put that cap on me, and when I walked in, the director goes, "Oh, he's coming home from school. I like that cap." And all my wardrobe, there were like 4 and 5 of every T-shirt, shirt, anything I wore, not just myself, everybody in the cast, in case like the adults might sweat or you spilled something on it. They could never match that hat. Now, my dad was, at that time, a principal. He retired as a superintendent, but he was also a coach, and he had just brought it home, or somehow it wandered into our house, and we never knew where we got it. And the makeup and wardrobe man could never find that exact hat anywhere they looked, and they'd looked for several years because they were afraid that it could get lost, we could spill something on it, whatever. So they were watching me like a hawk every minute. And it was my own hat. And so when the series ended, all the clothing and everything went back to wardrobe. And they said, "Well, we have to take this." And he said, "Nope, that's my personal property." And I took it home, and it's in my vault in my house.
And is it going into the Smithsonian?
It'll go someplace. I don't know if the Smithsonian will have it, but so I'm sure somebody will take it. But it's just an old green baseball cap. And the funny thing is, most people don't even know it's green because it was all in black and white. So I could basically give them any old baseball cap and say it was it.
Exactly.
Funny you say that. I think, on the new series, I don't think that they, you said they didn't use that hat, but earlier in the season, like the first season, Oliver has a different shade cap. So, then it's seen later on. Later on, there's like a brighter green cap. In the earlier seasons, the first season only, I believe, it's like...
Well, yeah, see, what happens is every year, we took off probably 3 or 4 months. And so things like baseball caps and, a lot of that wardrobe went back to the wardrobe department, and it just sat there. Well, if somebody ran in and needed a hat, they might grab it. So it may have just disappeared between season 1 or season 2 or whenever. And they would just go out and buy another one then. The original one I have, there was only one of, and they really guarded it, but they didn't worry about that on the new series.
Ever since I found that information out, whenever I watch the show now, I look at situations where it would be a double hat, like the episode where you build the boat and you go into the lake because the boat flips over. That hat, there's a dummy hat in there, because
because they couldn't afford to have me lose it in the lake or have it get wrecked. So they had a hat that kind of looked like it, but if you noticed, all the things in the lake were shot at a distance. None of the close-ups, when we did close-ups and things like that, we always went back to the original. When I was out on the lake or doing things that were far shots, and they thought, whoever knew that the show would even still be on, they never thought people would get that much into it. But there was, yes, for things like that, they did, and the wardrobe man did that purposely, because if he'd have lost that hat, he'd have been in big trouble.
With the wardrobe man, because he was the adamant one that made sure that, because he didn't want to use the hat in the first place.
Nope, they never did. They wanted to just keep it. In fact, as soon as I would walk off, and I told you it was my hat, so it wasn't like it was part of their wardrobe, which really frustrated them. And so as soon as I'd start to, leave the set and maybe go back to school or whatever, they were right there to grab it for me because they were afraid. I was a kid. I could have just picked it up, ran and had it flown off my head or something, and they could never match it. They tried all 6 years to find a hat that looked like it. My dad was a coach, and so he may have brought it home sometime, but they could not find a duplicate of that hat.
When I was in high school, I worked at my high school job was working at Ponderosa, and the uniform had a green hat exactly like the ones that you wore in the new series, which I always thought was kind of cool. My buddy was like, "Oh, I see you got a beaver cap." I said, "Well, yeah, I've been looking for one for years." So, were you ever handed a script and read it and were like, how am I going to pull this off, or had any questions of how you were going to do it?
First of all, one of the things is for most of the years of the show, I never read the script because it was read to me, just because it would have taken too long for me to read the script. So we would go in and read it on a Monday, and I would read just my lines, but not really. I mean, I knew that it wasn't real life, so it wasn't like if I needed any help, I would just go to him and say, well, I can't do this, and then we'd figure out a way to do it. But I can't honestly ever remember when that happened. I mean, there were just so many tricks that they could use by moving the camera back or moving it forward, and a lot of things they would write, and then when we went into rehearsal on Monday and Tuesday, if they really didn't work out how they thought it would, because when you're writing, it's easy. When you take it onto a set and have people have to do it, it's a lot harder. A lot of times they just change it.
As far as your teenage years and the last 2 seasons, thinking of the last 2 seasons of the show, were there points where you went, I'm reading this script and I'm just really not feeling that this is, like, by this point, Beaver should know better than to, I don't know, follow Gilbert's advice or whatever. I'm not feeling like putting on the bunny costume. This is not cool. Or were you just like, it's just a job, just going to do what they ask me without questioning it?
Yeah, it wasn't that it was just a job, but that's what you do as an actor. You're given a script, and then you develop a character. And, I'd done a lot of different shows where I played all sorts of kids, both good and bad, before Beaver. So it wasn't like it was some big deal. Now, sometimes they would come to me and ask me, Jerry, if this happened to you, what would you do? Would you do anything differently? And sometimes they'd say, well, maybe I'd do this or that. And sometimes they'd change it, and sometimes they wouldn't. But, it was a very easy show to do because I was a kid, and it was written, the writers had a lot of children between them. So it wasn't like they were just, making things up the kids might do. Most of the shows were taken from real life. So it was easy to portray things that kids really did.
Hugh Beaumont directed several episodes. Do you roughly know how many he directed and what kind of directing style did he have?
I would say under 20, but maybe 10. but it was just something that he'd always wanted to do, and this was a chance. It wasn't at the very beginning. I don't think he did it probably till the third, maybe fourth season. But it was hard because when you're directing, especially since he was in a lot of scenes, and he had to turn it over to his first assistant director. He didn't know the show well, but it's still hard when you're trying to act in a scene, especially in the long shots and two shots. And not only do you have to think about yourself, but you have to think about all the other actors and what they're doing, and if they're doing exactly what you want them to. As a director, you stand right next to the camera and watch everything, and so you get a much better feeling than being right with people in the middle of it.
What kind of directing style did he have?
I don't really understand when the people say style. I mean, we would walk in, we'd rehearse the show. Actually, on Monday we would read it. Tuesday we'd go in and basically stage it, where you knew where you're going to walk, and we'd talk things over. And I never did this, but some of the other people would say, I think on this line I should move, or I want to be here. And the director would set up all his shots. He'd think, okay, for this scene I'm going to have a long shot, I'm going to have a close-up of this character, maybe a two-shot, maybe a three-shot. And then the next 3 days we shot. So by the time we did it, we pretty much knew the script and, knew how it was going to go and where people were going to be. So it went kind of fast.
From what I understand, and like you've said in previous interviews, he played like Michael Shane, big tough guy, but in real life he was a minister, a Methodist minister.
Methodist, yes.
Yeah. So playing this was,
and he became an actor only to support his very poor congregation.
Right.
And that was Michael Shane. So he was not embarrassed, but how would you like to go to the movie theater and you're watching maybe some bizarre movie or whatever? Here comes this serial in between, and here's your minister as this tough guy beating up on some guy to get information.
So back then it was pretty easy to find an acting job. You just went in there, did a couple of readings, and then, back in his day. I know you went through a lot of...
Well, it wasn't easy. They had a lot of people. I think they had, I forget, at least 1,000 people on the job for both Barbara and Hugh, and for the kids they had a whole lot more. They had like 3,000 or 4,000 people. But the reason was it was for Wally and the Beaver and Eddie. And so the interview went on for many, many weeks because they'd say, okay, we like you, but, and you'd go, and then your agent would call you maybe 4 days later or the next week and say, well, they want to see you. And then you'd go back, and then they'd call you again, and then they'd match you up with people, and they wanted to see how you looked with this guy, and they didn't tell you that guy might be Eddie Haskell or he might be Lumpy, and they just wanted to see how the interactions would work, and the same thing with the mother and father. And then one day we went in, and they said, okay, this is the cast, and they said, this is Ken Osmond, it's he's Eddie Haskell, Frank Banks, he's Lumpy, Hugh Beaumont, Barbara Billingsley. In fact, they shot the pilot with a different Wally, and then after seeing all those people, they had to go back and start the search for Wally all over again.
The funny thing about that is with the new series, the same thing happened. The pilot movie had a different older brother, and then it switched to a different one. And as a matter of fact, when you guys replayed, when It's a Small World was found, and you played it as a special of the new Leave It to Beaver, there was a special intro with you and Kip and Wally and June, I believe it was, and Wally was Tony was putting out his I don't mean to come out as prejudiced, but the guy that played Wally, and it didn't match his, he was. So then Kip comes in and he's like, "Oh, come on, no sour grapes." He's like, I wasn't in the pilot for the new series, and everything turned out great. The only difference with that, though, is that Wally had the same name as the character that was replaced. Tony Dow played Wally and Paul Sullivan, he played Wally too. In the new series, it was Corey, and then it was Kip. The irony of that is they both had their own names.
Absolutely. I don't know why. I guess they must have been working too hard that week and couldn't bother to come up with a new name.
Although Kip, Kip Marcus, his name was spelt with two P's, and Kip Cleaver was spelt with only one. So they did alter it a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I don't. You know what? That was probably just a secretary hit an extra key and nobody cared.
How was your family life similar to the Cleavers? How was it different?
Well, it was different in that I was the oldest and not the youngest. I have a sister. I have 5 kids in my family and brothers, but I was the oldest of them. My dad was probably the perfect person to raise an actor because he was dealing with kids all the time. He was a coach and then a vice principal and retired as the superintendent of LA City Schools. So he was dealing with kids all the time, good kids and sometimes really bad kids. But, you know, it was a really fun life. I got a great education that basically set me up. I did real well in high school because I had a private tutor. I mean, that's the education of kings and queens of Europe. So, you know, if I was slow in a subject, we stayed there until I knew that subject back and forth. So it was just a really, and I had, you know, basically probably 100 people as parents, because if I wasn't happy there and I didn't want to work, the show wouldn't go on, and that's the truth with any kid. So, you know, I had a really good time on the set, and a lot of people that had kids at home, and they were just happy to, you know, play with me. I mean, like throw a ball back and forth and stuff like that, and they made it a very enjoyable time for the amount of hours I spent on the set.
I know that all of the characters, especially the ones that were regulars, you had the recurring ones.
Mm-hmm.
Did you see many of them, such as Wally, as like an older brother? Did you seek any like quote unquote older brother advice from them?
Not really, to be honest with you. I mean, they were more like probably friends that you had. I mean, maybe if you were a freshman, you knew a sophomore or a senior because maybe your brother or sister had known their brother and sister or whatever. So they were just good friends, and we were all doing the same thing. It wasn't like, although we had the same teacher, I mean, when we did a scene, it wasn't like they were this and I was that. We were all equals. In fact, we were even equal to the parents, except they had a lot harder because we could only work 8 hours a day. And so they would do all our close-ups, all our long shots. We'd go home, and they would sometimes have to go back, and they'd have to go to the different sets and stuff. So they might work till 8 or 9 o'clock at night so they could do all their stuff to make it up, and they'd have to change their clothes again and the whole big thing. So it was a lot easier being a kid, but it was a very, very fun life. And all the people on the set, the cameraman, everybody, you know, all those people had kids, and they knew how to deal with kids. So they made it really fun to be there.
Yeah, it's almost like being like school activity, kind of like, you know, you kind of like doing a school play, I guess. You know, you're acting and
very much so. But I was there all day, so they wanted to make it fun. They, you know, if Tony or myself or any child actor doesn't want to be there, it's really hard to make it, you know, so they want to be there. So everybody just made it fun. We'd go out and we'd play football outside the set for a while and cast footballs and baseballs and, you know, just do a lot of fun things. All those people had kids, so it's not like, you know, they were in any way, you know, not worried about kids, but, you know, they knew how to treat kids. And so they made it really fun for us. I mean, I built a sailboat that cost them a fortune. And it was just a little model one because I found a piece of wood and I started drawing on it. And the makeup man came over and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm going to make a boat so when we go to Friends Lake, I can sail it." And the next thing I know, the prop man got it, and then he gave it to the special effects guy, and the guy in special effects put a rudder on it and a big weight at the bottom, and the wardrobe department made a huge sail for it, and I had this beautiful sailboat that, you know, I was thinking all I wanted was just this little boat.
They gave you the star treatment.
Yeah, I got it. It is. I still have it. It's a beautiful. It's little. I mean, it's probably more than a foot long, the sails, but you know, all the sails are perfectly stitched, and it has little brass things all over it, and you know, each department contributed.
Wow.
Yeah, that's really cool. So when you were doing the show, when you were doing Leave It To Beaver, did you have any interactions or friendships with other child stars of that era?
Honestly, no, but I mean, I would see them at events, but you know, we were always busy. We might talk to them in a line if you were waiting, you know, like if it was a big event and you had to go through you know, the cameras and stuff, you might stand there. But for the most part, I mean, we were on a set, even people you know, there were people on other shows with kids, but I mean, we were busy. I mean, we were either working, we were in school, Tony and I used to go outside, and with some of, like Ken Osmond and Frank Bank and some of the crew members would throw footballs and baseballs around. But I mean, it was a job, and there wasn't a lot of really free time between going to school and going on the set.
Now we're going to move on to questions about the new series that you did.
Sure.
From the pilot was from 1980 was 1983.
Right.
It
we made
aired
it in 1982, but it did debut in 1983.
Right. It was filmed in 82, and then it was aired in 1983. Actually, the beginning was March 19th, 1983. Actually, and then you started the new series the following year. So it was 83, and then 84 is when you started the new series on Disney Channel, correct?
Right. And then it went on to Turner.
Right. Then it went to Turner after that. How long was it before you knew that Ted Turner bought the rights to the show? And then, after the Disney Channel had canceled after the first season.
He didn't really buy, honestly, the rights. He co-sponsored it with Universal, so they both put up half the money. Because when you're doing a show like that, I forget, it was close to like $500,000 to $750,000 per episode. So it was a lot of money. Now, they knew it'd be like the original show if they made it good enough, that if they had enough, they could run it forever. And that was the whole theory, that they were going to run it back to back with the old Leave It to Beaver for a half hour and the new for a half hour. So that's why he jumped in. He figured that he already had been showing for many, many years the original Leave It to Beaver on the TBS stations.
Did the new Leave It to Beaver contain any quote unquote Easter eggs of the original shows?
Not really. I mean, if there was something that was very obvious or something that we thought would be good, but I mean, it wasn't like we had to put one in every scene or even every episode. There were things that we would say, like, Tony Dow and I might say, oh, you know what, in the original show, if this was that, and they'd go back and look it up and say, oh yeah, you guys are right, but there wasn't a whole lot of that. I mean, it was a very happy set, and everybody was glad to be working. And actually, Tony and I learned a good lesson, because when we were doing the original show, we were either there from 9 to 6 or 8 to 5. When you're adult, then you go back and do all your close-ups, and you could be there till 10 or 11 at night. And that's what Hugh Beaumont and Barbara Billingsley and all the adult actors had been doing on the original show. So we learned out how much tougher it is to work with kids.
You get that end of it. You're working the later hours.
You're working the later hours, and you also get the earlier calls, because the kids can't be there till 8 o'clock in the morning. So you get the 7 o'clock call to be in makeup and wardrobe, so that when the kids come in, you'll be out of there.
And then you're able to go on set with them if you have a wide shot with them.
Right. Yeah. But the children can only work either 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, and to go over even after 6 o'clock, you have to get special permission and all sorts of stuff like that. So it's very, very well regulated. But when you're an adult actor, then sometimes you'll film all the long shots, and then the kids get their close-ups, and then they go on to the next set. So you can be there till very, very late at night, because the adult actors can be there all night for all they care.
Yeah. So was the new Leave It to Beaver your first directing experience? And
yes, it was.
And how does an actor go about directing an episode where he is involved in the episode? So if you're in a scene and you're directing, a scene,
I would. It's not really that hard. We had a day of reading the show, and then as a director, you go in with the producers, and when you're reading it, we read it over 3 times on Monday morning, and if something sounded odd, or maybe a person was having problems with a word, there might be a word that somebody, for some reason, had trouble pronouncing or something like that, or it was a long speech, maybe it needed to be cut up. And then Tuesday, we would go on to the set. And so I and Tony both, as directors, were really at an advantage, because we weren't directors for the first, I guess it was 2 or 3 years of the show. So we knew all the ins and outs of each set, because all those walls are movable. So we know where the good places to put the camera was, where you can make a fast transition to do the close-ups, where because each director did it differently. When you come in as a new director, you walk on and you're looking at the set, and you just have to figure out everything. We had, both of us had quite a few years because the set was the same as when we were a child, and we knew where all the hot spots were for close-ups, two shots, different kinds of staging that you could do.
When they aired the Rap Party episode leading into the third season, was that taped in front of a live audience?
No, none of them were ever in front of a live audience. There were people, like when you're on the back lot, a lot of times the tours would go by. So when we're outside, like at Friends Lake and stuff, you might have buses of people that would watch you. But that was the Universal tours, because when we were there was when they actually opened up the studios to the tours. And before that, you didn't get on a studio lot. I mean, there were no tours. Nowadays people go to, Disney World and Disneyland and Universal Studios. But before that, that was a guarded community. You had to have a pass. If I wanted to bring in another, like say my mom was coming one day and my dad the next, at first we had to get them permission. They had to have a special card. You had to show them a picture, ID. So, I mean, getting on a studio lot was not an easy thing.
And I believe the guard guy, his name was Scotty, which was the name of the guy for many, many years. I've heard his name quoted through many director cut commentaries. So yeah, Scotty's a staple of Universal Studios.
He was and he was Scottish, so he had a bit of a, I guess it's not a brogue, that's Irish, but whatever the Scottish people had, he had a bit of an accent, and he was, in fact, I don't want to say all because that's too many, but most of them were retired and a lot of times shot in the line of duty and not been able to go to act the full service police officers. But they were all police officers in some way. Some of them were retired, but some of them had been, very badly shot up in whatever kind of things police officers get shot up for.
Which Ken Osmond knows very much about. Very
much so. He was a dedicated LAPD officer, and when they told him, he was very disappointed when they told him he'd have to go on desk work, and that's the only reason we got him in the new Leave It To Beaver, because otherwise he said he would have gone back onto the streets. He didn't want to work on a desk and just, write up reports and review them. He liked that hardcore, and he was in the worst part of L.A. I mean, he was down in downtown L.A. in basically the place where all the, a lot of bad things go on, where all the drunks hang out, and, it's not a good part of town, and that's where he wanted to be. And he's really tough, but he's not very heavy. He's not like a big, bulky, built-up guy, and he's on a motorcycle. So the first person that gets to anything is a motorcycle cop, because he can zoom in and out of traffic and stuff. So, when something happened, he was the first guy there, and he took care of it. And he took care of business all the time.
The funny thing about that, Ken Osmond, he's so thin and so skinny, always has been.
Absolutely.
My cousin is a cop for for the city of Waukesha, which I'm sitting in right now, actually. And she's very thin, just like Ken, and she's much shorter. And she told me a story once where she went to a call, and she was called as backup. So they were in there, they came to a house as it was a domestic violence deal, and she was at the back door in case someone would, try to escape, which they did. And this guy comes out who's like 3 times the size as she is, and she's just like, yeah, I just knocked him down to the ground.
Yeah. I'm the oldest, but I have 2 brothers, and my brother-in-law, they're all sheriffs. And it's just, I not that I was mean to them, but they were my little brothers, and I told them what to do. And now they're sheriffs, and I'm looking at them going, they're carrying guns, they got billy clubs. That's the people I was telling, don't do that, do this, whatever.
Yeah. So many of the actors had members of their family on the show. Tony Dow's son was on the show a couple of times. Let's see, there was Fred, Ken Osmond, his 2 sons were on there.
Right.
Christopher, Tony's son, appeared as Freddie's, Eddie's son, who is Eric Osmond.
Right.
Appeared as a Little League teammate, and then he later appeared in a flashback of Wally's after Wally fell off a motorcycle. He was a younger version, a teenage version of him in the world famous Springfield game. And then there was also Frank Bank, his daughter appeared in the show, as well as John Snee's little brother, Mark, Kalina's little sister, Kalina Kiff's little sister, Juanita, and then I believe, and then Eric Osmond and Christian Osmond as Freddie Haskell and Eddie Bomber Haskell Jr. Did your kids ever have any interest in coming on the show?
I don't think they did. It wasn't that I didn't want them to do it for any reason. I think that's what people always think. But they were always, busy. My son played a lot of sports, and my daughter, they came to the set and they watched me do it. It wasn't like I was embarrassed to have them there or something like that. But they were not really that interested in it.
So
they knew how much hard work it was.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of long hours for me acting. I would make a good actor. I could act. My problem is memorization. I would never. I don't know how many pages is a typical half-hour script.
I think we used to have 39 to like 40, depending on if there was a lot of action or if there was more talking. It would, but it was around 36 to 39 pages.
Oh, that's not too bad.
And they would, they could tell that something like if it said, the boys put the boat in the water. Well, that's, like 3 little words, and it takes 2 seconds to say. When you do that, that's probably a 45 to 50 second shot. So, it was all timed out. We went in on Monday and Tuesday and read it, and it was timed to make sure that everything, the way we were reading it would be the way we'd read it on the set. So except for things like backing the car out or, going in and out the doors, they had a pretty close idea of how much time that particular show. And on Tuesday, on Wednesday, when we got the new script, they might cut it or they might elongate it depending on how it read on Monday and Tuesday.
So was the routine for filming the show, was that basically the same as the original show? Was it the same sort of?
Absolutely. We went in on Monday and we would go in. Tony and I would go to school at about 10 o'clock or 10:30, about, depending, whatever, I don't know what for reason. We'd go to the producer's office and we would just read it. Now, when I was smaller, I would just sit there, so they wanted me to hear like the rhythm of the show. When I was a little bit older, like I was probably, I guess, 8 or 9, then I would read my own part. But otherwise, the script woman would read my part in the beginning, and everybody would, and they would time it. And so sometimes they would think, okay, it's a little short. Oh, this one's very long, and they'd cut things out. And they would also listen to see if something, like if we would stumble over something, or, when somebody said, well, this is not the way I don't think my character would act, answer, or whatever. They would maybe go back and do it, or they might just say, nope, that's what we think it is. Do it.
So at the end of the 4th season of that show, was it a surprise? Were you guys surprised that it ended?
No, not really. I mean, it was good, but there was not friction, but Ted Turner and Universal are both kind of people that like their own way, and each one had their own ideas, and so it made it a little more difficult than just having one company that was in charge and had a set way for the show to be done, and each one thought that their ideas were the best, so it made it a little difficult on everybody.
The battle of the egos and the big man wins.
Well, it wasn't even the egos. It was just that each one had, their own kind of ideas for the show, and, it was a lot of it had to do with costs, and, do you want to do more outdoor stuff? Do you want to have more people? Should we have the original cast more? There's just a lot of questions, and whenever you get 2 people, you have 2 different opinions.
Yeah.
Here you're dealing with a lot more than 2. You're dealing with, each one probably had 15 or 20 executives that had something to say about it.
Exactly, and then it gets to be a big knot and big
Yep.
big complication. So when, because I know at the end of that show, it kind of gave you the impression. I was just wondering if it was the original plan, and then it just kind of collapsed maybe after it didn't work out between the 2 parties. It kind of gave you a premise like it was going to go on. Like Beaver was going to get married. It looked like I'm sorry, Bomber was going to be a regular part of the show. It looked like, that Kevin, which was your nephew, Wally's younger son, was going to take over kind of the Beaver character. And then it was just like not anymore. So you knew at the two part series finale that it was over then.
Well, we weren't sure because every year that we did it for, I think it was 6 years. So every year we didn't know whether Ted Turner would want it back or somebody else was, So, we were signed to a contract that said we would do it, but we were also signed to a contract that said we didn't have to do it. So each year they'd say, okay, now this season's going to be, 20 shows. We may add a few, and they may have done a few more. When we did the original series, in fact, it ran for 6 years, but we knew that each of the 6 years we were going to do 39 shows. But because it was in color and there were a lot more things on the new show, it was a lot more expensive. So there were a lot more moving parts to people saying, this, who's going to pay for this, who's going to pay for that.
Which also can be a mess sometimes.
Absolutely, because you're dealing with, Ted Turner, and he's a cowboy. He's a nice guy, but he's got his own ideas, and then you're dealing with Universal, which is old school Hollywood. So, they didn't clash, but they both had different ideas of exactly how the show should work.
So now you wrote a couple of the episodes. Was that your first experience in writing? And
yes, I directed too. So, those are really good opportunities for both Tony Dow and myself. Now, when we were doing even the original shows, a lot of times the writers would come to us, and especially during the rehearsals and things like that, they'd say, Jerry, or even Tony, it wasn't just me, but when you were reading this or when you were saying it, it sounded a little garbled. How would you change that if you were really talking? And we'd say, well, I'd say this or I'd say that. And why is this word in there? And then they'd write it that way, and of course it was a lot easier. And also, it was really the way kids talk. So it wasn't just me, it was all the characters. If they heard you stumble over something, they'd come and talk to you about it, because the writers had all those kids, so they were used to dealing with kids. It wasn't like they were afraid to come and talk to us and say this or that or the other thing and ask us questions about how we felt.
So now, when you wrote an episode, how did you go about, what kind of process goes through writing a script, and how did you get ideas?
Well, that's what you do. First of all, you have to come up with the premise. And there's always not only the premise, but subplots, And then you have to decide how is each character going to react to this premise, and what would they do. And then if, I was directing, then you have to decide who you're going to pick for. We already had the cast, but there's always different people, so you have to do a lot of interviewing to say, who is, when you read this scene, how did you think this person looked? Was it somebody that looked like this, or was it somebody that looked like that? And you interview a lot of people, and all of a sudden one person will walk in, you go, that's the person. They'd nail it. They'd come in and they'd read the script, and you'd read it with them, and you'd say, yep, that's the one we're hiring. So it took a week to do each show. We had 2 days of rehearsal, or 1 day of basically reading the script. We read it over 3 or 4 times, and the writers would hear it. And then on Tuesday, we'd come back, and we would block it. And at the end of the day, about 4:30, we'd come in and run the show from building, set to set. And it took about an hour, but because we'd move around. But they would hear it and see where we were going to move, and if there were other characters in it, like Gus the fireman, a lot of times they would bring him in just to see how it played and to make sure there was a rhythm to the show. And then the next 3 days we would shoot. We basically shot for the kids 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, and the poor adult actors, and I learned this on the new Leave It To Beaver, after 5 o'clock when the kids go home, you go out and you have dinner, and then you come back and you work quite a bit because you have to go back to each of the sets and reset up and do your close-ups and things.
So in the writing process, as a writer, you're writing a script, and so you're kind of time managing and kind of getting an idea of where people are going to be going as for your taping schedule, or is that pretty much a director's?
Very definitely, and you also have to figure out, some scenes are a lot longer because, if you're outdoors, it's a lot harder to get all the equipment out there. So you want a lot of shorter scenes in the place, in the house maybe, and you don't want to have as many set moves because, to move from, say, the living room to the boys' room, that could take 30 or 40 minutes because all the crew has to move all the lights and everything over and set up everything. So it's not like it's a live show where you go from one set to the next. With a film show, all the lighting has to be set for each one. So as I say, Monday and Tuesday we'd rehearse it, and the headlight man would be there. He would kind of know how to light it, and when we did it, we'd go on and we'd run it, and he would see exactly where we were going to stand. The cameraman would say, "Okay, I'm going to do a long shot, a close-up, and over the shoulder, and this, that, and the other thing." And he would light 4 of those a little bit so it wouldn't take him as long. And then we would do each of those and then move on to the next scene.
We recently lost Dennis Snee, who did several writing. He was a producer on the show. Mm-hmm. What are your memories of working with him?
He was just a very nice guy. I mean, one of the things that the original producers of Leave It to Beaver and the new Leave It to Beaver did is and most smart producers will do this, they were looking for people that would get along with people. So, we never had people that were, your typical Hollywood type that thought that they were, God's gift to us. Everybody knew that it was a show. It was a lot of fun to do, but it was a workplace, and everybody had to come in. They had to know their lines. We could fool around a little bit, but when it came to working, they were paying a lot of money to a lot of people, and if you missed a lot of lines or fooled around too much, they were losing money. So, it was definitely a workplace. It wasn't a place to go. It wasn't like a playground.
Oh, there was an episode where there was a video of you as a young boy being chased by a dog. It was like an 8 millimeter film. I don't recall the exact episode, but was that actual footage from your own archives, like from your family?
I don't think so. I think they just went out and shot it. I think I don't remember honestly exactly what you're talking about. I think I do, but I think it was they just took me out to the back lot and they had this dog, and the trainer gave me a piece of probably beef or maybe pork and put it in my hand and said, "Let the dog smell it." He said, "The dog's going to come after you. You run, and the dog will come after you, but the dog knows you have a treat, so he may jump at you a little bit, but just hold it up. And then when the director says cut, give him the piece of meat, because that's what he's trained to do. He's trained to follow that piece of meat." So I just ran, and the dog came after me, and the director went cut, and the dog took the meat, and I gave him a pet, and we went back and did it again.
So that was done as a young child. That was actual footage of you.
I think I know what you're talking about. I think it was, but I'm not positive.
Because and then there was footage that they did of you as an adult, and your boys, Kip and Oliver, were watching this video and they were laughing, and you asked them why they were laughing, and because earlier in the episode you had saw the one of you as a child running away from the dog, and then at the end of the episode you said something like, "You're still laughing at videos of me of me," and he said, "Oh yeah, you want to take a look," and then it was you as an adult doing the same thing, running away from the dog.
Yeah, those are fun times. As I say, all those people were real nice, and we got along real well. So we just had a lot of fun doing it. So as happy as everyone looked on the show on film, we were having just as good a time like that. We didn't have any divas or people that nobody liked, and everybody, all the producers and directors and all the cast especially, it was nice. It was like going back to junior high or elementary school. They were all friends of mine, and here I got to work with them again.
So if there was a show that, like today, where Beaver and Wally were grandfathers, how would you yourself envision the Cleavers in the 21st century?
Well, we did the new Leave It to Beaver, so I don't really think it would be that much different. And the only difference was that we had 2 characters. We had both Wally and the Beaver playing the Ward part, and we put a little girl in the show. Wally had an oldest daughter instead of a son, so we tried to bring in the female audience a little bit more. But it was really fun. In fact, when we did the new Leave It to Beaver, we even had there weren't a whole lot of them, to be honest with you, left, but we had a few people from the original crew who came back and worked with us, and that was fun because these were people I saw for 39 weeks for 6 years every day, and they were all good friends of mine. It was nice to see them, and it was just a fun time. It was like maybe being able to go back to elementary school and not relive it, but have as good a time as you did then, and just have a lot of friends there, and you know your way around, and everybody's very nice. So it was just a wonderful time.
The way I would look at, I would kind of like to see it go like this, where we'd, because the way they did it with the new show in the 80s, they keep the house as part of the the house was basically a character of the show. It was that much of a staple. I would like to. It would be kind of cool to see. Wally was a lawyer, so it'd be cool to see him as a judge, and the Beaver could go. He could be at the salt mines, being the head of the place, with Oliver.
Salt mines, I love it.
Yeah, with Oliver working there. Oliver would be married. He'd be in the house. I think Kip would be. I think you'd have to keep them all centralized. So I think it'd be cool if he was like on Maple Drive in the old house that you guys had in the original show, and Kelly would be a lawyer. She'd have a law firm.
I've got one problem now for you.
What's that?
You know what that is? The reason we switched houses is that there are different studios.
Oh, I know, but you could definitely look at it. I'm sure. Well, like the new show, I know that's an issue, but yeah, the new show, when you went to a new studio, it was a built set. So like,
well, yeah, no, it went from what used to be Republic and now is Review to Universal, because MCA bought Universal Studios, which had been around they started in the silent. Both of them had been from silent movies, so. It was a huge lot. That's why in some of the later episodes when we did move to the second house, we were outside a lot more because it was a lot bigger studio and they had a lot more sets that they could go to, like parks and things like that, actually on the back lot.
That's the one thing that's kind of cool. And, they could, and Kelly would be married. I guess Kelly would marry Duffy. And actually, I envision him to be a smart guy and have a decent job, because he wasn't very bright. He was kind of the frowned upon boyfriend.
Well, everybody has one or two of those.
Oh yeah,
or girlfriend.
Oh, absolutely. And the father always has an issue with their daughter's boyfriends, and Wally certainly did at that.
That's right.
So now we're going to turn it over to Maria, and she's got some questions.
So, Jerry, we know, we have heard you. Like I said, we've seen you in interviews, and it brings us great joy that you're so proud and that you understand. Some actors don't understand, like, the impact in culture in general, pop culture, TV, the legacy of Leave It To Beaver, the show. We are wondering, how do your adult children feel about your role, not just in one show at one point in time, but as Americana?
Well, honestly, I don't even think they see that. They know the show, but they're so used to it. I mean, it's like if you're president of the United States and you have kids, they just think, oh yeah, my dad's the president. My kids know that I'm an actor, and they know that I'm me. But when I go to the set, I have other kids that that are supposedly my family, and all sorts of stuff like that.
Do they concern? Oh, go ahead.
And they're all very proud of me. I mean, my daughters are married now, so they have different names. But they were always knew that when people would come up to them when they were in school and say, "Mathers, oh, that's the Beaver," da da da. And they got to go to a lot of parades, and a lot of times they would ride in the cars with me, or a lot of the different things that you get to do as someone that's in Hollywood that a lot of kids don't get to do. We go to premieres and just a lot of fun things that they got to live through that honestly, if I had a regular life, they wouldn't have been able to do.
And do you think they will be, or they would want to be involved in keeping the legacy and keeping it alive? Like we see other children of actors some who are long, long gone, going to interviews or celebrating anniversaries of a show?
Well,
Do you think they want to be involved?
My kids were very smart. They went behind the scenes. So my son's a sound man, and my one of my daughters is an executive at Netflix, and the other one's a teacher. So they're not silly enough to be actors.
Exactly. What do your grandkids say about the show? Their experience of seeing you on TV, seeing Grandpa on TV, but also, what do they think of the show in general?
They're the oldest of them is 4, so they don't. I don't even think they put it together. I know they have watched it because their parents, I think, have showed it to them. But I think they'll have to be in there at least 5 to 8 to 9 to 10 to be able to think about it. And then it's very hard for them. I know I've had other people who have kids, and they say, my son wants to meet you, and they come and they go, no, you're not the beaver. Beaver's my size. Yes. No.
That is.
They don't comprehend it. Yes, it was made, in the 50s, and someday you'll be big too. But they were thinking that they were going to meet me and we were going to go out in the backyard and play.
It's exactly. I was going to say it, but you expressed it so eloquently. When my daughter met you, she was 4.5.
Uh-huh.
And I was in the car. Her daddy was saying, we're going to meet Jerry Mathers, the beaver that you watch all the time. But he grew up. He's just exactly like Grandpa. He's exactly as old as Grandpa.
Uh-huh.
So, he's a grown-up now. So we think, okay, we've explained it. She'll do fine when she meets him. It was exactly what you say. The disappointment and we can't play.
Yeah, that was the whole thing. They figured that, they're going to meet me and we're going to run around and, boys think we're going to play baseball, girls think we're going to play house, whatever.
Yeah, the concept of time and aging, right? What were your favorite cartoons as a kid? And when Brian and I were formulating these questions, we're like, wait a minute, cartoons in the
50s.
Late 40s, early 50s.
Well, actually,
we don't
I
know
was born
much
in
about
48,
that.
but cartoons, I watched a lot of Disney stuff. I'd always watch the Saturday morning cartoons because I worked 5 days a week, basically. So Monday through Friday, I was out of the house by 8 o'clock, but I wasn't home till 5. And if on a couple days of the week we would have readings and stuff like that, we'd leave at 9. I'd be home at 6, and we'd have dinner. I'd study my lines and maybe watch one show and go to bed.
So is your generation pre-Flintstones or?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, we were watching
so you were a teenager.
Howdy Doody, and a lot of the shows that were competitive with Leave It to Beaver, Donna Reed, and My Three Sons, and a lot of shows like that. But I honestly didn't have, except on weekends, and we would do PR sometimes on weekends, a lot of time because I had to be at the studio at 8 o'clock, work till 5. We'd come home, we'd have dinner with the family. I'd study my lines, do some homework because I had to go to school, and then go back the next day.
So does the fact that you work on TV, you're like your age, you're 9, you're 10 years old, you work on TV all week, does that make television and watching television on the weekend or in the summer less appealing to you because, I know that's how it all works and it's just
because I didn't know how it works because each show was different and has its own story. So it's not like I knew how Gunsmoke or My Three Sons or any of the other shows I knew how every Leave It to Beaver would end, but all the other shows I had no idea. They were just as unique to me as they would be to you.
Perfect, yeah. So when you were filming Leave It to Beaver, did you were saying you watched Gunsmoke and did you have like your absolute favorite from that era that you tried not to miss, especially when you were on summer hiatus?
Oh, I always liked all the westerns, so Wagon Train, and they filmed right down the street from us. And Father Knows Best was people I knew. They weren't on the same studio a lot, but I knew most of the actors, so they were friends of mine. It was always fun seeing the different actors and actresses that I worked with or saw at events, and then seeing their shows and knowing that I knew who they were and who they really were, where other people thought they were just like that, like John Forsythe and Shirley MacLaine and all the wonderful people that I got to know. And Alfred Hitchcock was on the studio a lot doing things like Psycho and a lot of things like that. And when I was doing The Trouble with Harry, I used to sit on his lap and read my lines. So, a big Rolls Royce would come up with a big chauffeur, and the door would open from the back, and he would, stick out his head and say, "Hello, Jerry. How are you? What are you doing today?" And everybody would say, "You know Alfred Hitchcock?" And I'd say, "Yeah, When I was doing Trouble with Harry, I'd sit on his lap and run lines."
How wonderful. Here's a question that is going to be for the record. It's going to be for the record. Aside from Leave It to Beaver, what do you personally think are the top 5 classic shows of all time? In America, we're talking about Americana and Heritage and the mid-century, of the golden era of TV. If you had to rank them and say these are the top 5. I Love Lucy, I
think, would have to be in there.
Mm-hmm.
Father Knows Best. Maverick. Gunsmoke. Let's see, one more. Probably All in the Family.
Wow, yes, very iconic. What current television or Netflix, Hulu, all those things do you watch? What could we find you watching when you sit down these days?
Well, almost anything. I mean, I'm very eclectic, so I watch a lot of old things, but I watch a lot of new things. There's no certain genre that I say, well, it has to be this. And as an actor, I like to see a whole bunch of different things. So, I don't watch a whole lot of, honestly, daytime talk, but I do watch a lot of movies and do a lot of news. I like to be kept up on world affairs and what's going on in the world. So I do get up every morning, and first thing I turn on, to my wife's kind of discontent, is the news, and I watch for an hour or so, and she says, "How can you watch it every day? It's the same." I say, "No, it's different news every day. It's the same people. They talk about the same things."
Yeah. How about, let's go to the 90s, and not so much the classic golden era of TV, and all the sitcoms and shows that made it big, not just in the family category. Do you recall any favorites from the 1990s?
Not really. In the 90s, I was very, very busy doing the new Leave It to Beaver, and I found out what Barbara and Hugh used to have to do, which is you go in at 8 o'clock, you work till 5 or 6, and then you go back and do all your close-ups and things.
So no time to sit
so you don't watch that much television.
Seinfeld and Frasier and all those kind of things.
No, you go study your lines and go to bed.
True. Do you like stand-up comedy?
Yes, very much so. I don't have really a favorite comedian. I like, in fact, I used to be, to my parents, not a real good friend because he was an adult, of Bob Newhart. So he would come to a lot of my parents' things, and he was a very funny man. I don't really have any current people that I'm, that in touch with or follow that closely, but I always like a good comedian.
Okay, and here's just a fun fan question.
Sure.
If Leave It to Beaver had never been produced, but it was still in your heart and your destiny that you were going to be in a family series and you had to, which other show would you have picked to be on?
Probably a cop show or a Western maybe. I always, it'd always be fun. I know it'd be a lot of work to work with like horses, but, something like Maverick or Wagon Train or, all the different shows, different genres. It's always interesting. It was interesting to be able to play a little boy, but it would be interesting, too, to be able to play a little boy in a different time period.
Absolutely. And it's very boyish, guns and horses and such.
Yeah, that would be fun, I know.
How about science fiction? Is there a genre in science fiction or a series that you followed?
Not that I followed. I like science fiction. It doesn't bother me in any way. I've gone to a lot of science fiction things, and a lot of times when they have autograph shows and stuff, they have, like a separate, not auditorium, but a separate section. And, I like science fiction. There was nothing that I can't ever remember. I don't think that I was on a science fiction film, but I've seen a lot of them, and I like them. It's a genre that I definitely find amusing.
Again, you were already a grown-up as far as when Star Wars came on and things like that. Did you ever turn down a role in a movie or a show that went on to be a smash success and you regretted turning it down?
No.
Never happened to you.
No, but you have to remember, for a lot of that time, I was doing other things. I was in the service for 6 years. I was selling real estate, and I had a full-time job. I did work if I got the chance, but I was a banker. I was a operations and a loan officer with the third largest bank in the United States for a while. I did that because I got a very lucky break, because I'd been investing the money from Leave It To Beaver with this bank since I had done the original show in the 50s. And when I was getting out of college, I went to Berkeley. The bank manager said, "What are you going to do now, Jerry? Are you going to go back to acting?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I haven't done a lot of acting." He said, "Well, we've seen you handle your money here for quite a few years, and you've done a very good job. How would you like to become a bank officer?" So I then went into banking, and then I became a loan officer, and I was making these loans to these real estate people. I'm thinking, gee, I'm making this much money, and this guy is going to make a lot more money on this selling his house. So then I went into real estate, and I was a $1 million salesperson in real estate, which sounds like a lot of money, but in California, it's not really. And then at that time, I had a lot of free time, or not a lot of free time, but then they came to me and said, we would like to do the new Leave It To Beaver, and we're just checking on your availability. And I said, well, it's not like I have a job. I have to be here from 8 to 5. They said, well, we'd just like to do a movie of the week. And I said, okay. And the movie of the week was so popular, they said, now we'd like to do the new Leave It To Beaver. And I did that, and then I kind of got back into acting. And so it's been a really nice life, but there's not really been a lot of, tremendous drama or struggle.
Yeah, we're very glad for you for that.
So am I.
All right, we're moving on to a section, a music section.
Okay.
We assume you're into music because Beaver and the Trappers.
Absolutely.
Were you into the Beatles, Elvis, the Stones? Which singers and bands?
I like Cream. I like the Rolling Stones. I like the Beatles. I also had a lot the Beach Boys. I lived out here in California, so there were a lot of different concerts in Los Angeles. It was a venue where a lot of people play, so I got to see a lot of those people live.
Wow.
And especially up at Berkeley when I was in college. I mean, they had a lot of bands come in there that were big bands that, I was lucky enough to be able to get a ticket and go down and, and see them live. So it was really a very, very good life.
When you were a loan officer at the bank, did you have anyone that says, "Oh, I know who you are"?
Oh, it wasn't a big secret. I mean, it wasn't anything I tried to hide. And people at the bank would even tell them, "Oh yeah, he's the loan officer. If you want to get a loan, share him out. Oh, you'll know who he is because he's the guy." And they'd go, "Oh, he's the Beaver, right?" And so a lot of poor people, I mean, if they didn't have the qualifications, they probably wasn't their best friend ever again, because I'd say, "Well, I'm sorry, but you don't have, you want a house that's $1 million, but you could qualify for about 100,000."
That's it. I'm not watching your show anymore.
That's it. They were gone.
Going back to music, what do you listen to these days?
Not anything particular. I mean, I still like rock and roll. I do like classical music, so I think, a lot of times I'll listen to, sometimes at home, classical music in the background, or just, but I've always been a rock and roll person, so, I like the Beatles, I like the Rolling Stones, I liked Cream. Those were the ones that I really listened to in the day when I was listening to a lot more rock and roll than I do now. But, I always, when I turn on the radio, when I'm driving in the car, it's always a pop station, I guess is what they call it now.
Yeah. So Sinatra, because you were so young when he was in his heyday, you were just a kid.
Yeah, and
it's not on your radar.
Yeah, well, I was also a DJ. I don't know if you know that. I'm a licensed DJ. In fact, I was
we have a question about that, so let's go to that.
Okay, well, I was on a Clear channel, so I not only was here in the United States, but I went all over the world. So
when was this?
That was KZEY, and it was in Los Angeles, and that was in the early 80s. And I was working in real estate at the time. I wasn't working as an actor, and I was selling a house to a guy, and he goes, "You're Jerry Mathers." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, I'm the program manager for this radio station, and we've just lost our Saturday and Sunday overnight DJ, and it would just be fun if you came down. So I said, well, what do I have to do? He said, well, just come down, and we'll put you with an engineer, and all you have to do is play rock and roll records. And so I did that. And after about 3 weeks, he said, how would you like to be a full-time DJ? And I said, well, that'd be fine. He said, well, you're going to have to, we'll set you up right now with an engineer, but you're going to have to take a test, and then you can be your own engineer. And so then I started doing that, and I was having a very good time. And then the new Leave It To Beaver came up, and so I had to quit that because I didn't have another full-time job.
So it lasted less than a year, would you say?
No, it was about actually off and on about 3 or 4 years.
So
because I was working, and during the summers I wouldn't do it as much because I was going out and doing personal appearances and things like that.
Was your radio name just Jerry Mathers, or did you have?
I had Jerry Mathers Gathers with Rock and Roll for the Mind, Body, and Soul.
That sounds fun. My brother is a radio DJ as well for many years, so this was a topic that's interesting to me. Did people call in just to hear your voice and just to chat with you as an actor instead of to solicit a song?
Pretty much. They would do both. They always had questions, and I was very open. It wasn't like I was trying to hide from being on Leave It To Beaver. So, I'd have like a lot of times over I did 6 hours on the air, so I was looking for things to do. So I'd have a question and answer period for about 20 minutes, and people would call in, and one person would say this, and another person would say, well, what about this? You had said this at one time. I'd say, well, yes, I said this, but this has meant that, and whatever. So we got a lot of banter going back and forth, which is good because you keep an audience that way, and made it a lot more interesting than just playing the same records over and over again.
Those were the days that the radio was, the 80s.
Yeah, as I say, and this was a clear channel, so, I get calls from all over the world.
Fantastic. We have a question about your early experiences with Bob Hope, which we've heard you talk about. Okay. And in one interview, there was a little tidbit that you say he gave you a watch, some sort of a wristwatch.
Mm-hmm. That was, I think, at the end of, it was That Certain Feeling, if I remember right. But anyway, he was a very, very nice man, and as a lot of actors do, when you've been on a movie with somebody for 3 or 4 months and you're going away, he just happened to give everyone in the cast, a wristwatch. So I got it's a very elegant Swiss, and I can't remember the name of it. I don't think it's a Rolex, but it might be. I don't wear it anymore because it's fairly old since I got it in the early 50s, but it's a very, very nice watch, and it's in my safe here at home, and on the back it says, to Jerry Mathers from Bob Hope.
Wonderful. That's great. Going back, and I think you already spoke about this a little bit, but I'll ask the question.
Sure.
When you're as young as 7, 8, 9, you say that they made it fun for you to go to the studio and keep you, not bored. What did you get out of it? Why did you keep doing it season after season? What is it for a child? I'm trying to think for a 7-year-old, what is the appeal? Because usually kids that age are not, I want to be famous, I want to be rich. What was your motivation and your joy of making this show?
It was fun. I had basically almost probably 100 people in the cast and crew, and you can't make a child work, so everyone tried to make it fun for me. So when we weren't filming, we'd be out throwing footballs, baseballs, playing games, all sorts of things like that. And it was just something that was very, very fun and easy for me.
So you never were bothered by, this is a lot of work.
I'll tell you an interesting thing I did. Because we had a few shows where I had to have funny things done to me, like the haircut, and where I cut my own hair, well, they couldn't do that. So they had to have the very best makeup man on the Universal lot. His name was Bob Don. And he only worked on very big movies usually, but everybody wanted to work on Leave It To Beaver because it's great when you work with kids because you go home a lot earlier. And so he also did, for Alfred Hitchcock, Psycho, he did the skull, except what they had to do was get a skull from, I don't know where they get it, but they had one, a medical skull, and he had to age it and then glue the hair on, which is a very long and tedious process, but for a kid, seeing a real human skull, I thought that was the most fun ever. And so I got to glue on and age that skull for Psycho with him. But I didn't get a credit.
Yeah. So you say that you took a break from acting to pursue sports and going to Notre Dame school.
Mm-hmm.
You turned down a potential pilot for a series that was going to follow Leave It To Beaver.
Right.
Do you recall what the premise of this proposed show was that you never made?
No, I don't. It was more in the offer. They don't want to tell you what it is. I mean, they tell you that it'd be about a boy, and they have a perfect part for you, but it wasn't anything that I knew I was going to do. I'd been working basically since I was 2 years old, but I had never been to school with other kids. I had also never had the advantage of being able to play any sports. So it just happened that Leave to Beaver ended in my freshman year, or what would be my freshman year in high school. So my family talked about it. My dad talked about it. I said, no, I want to go to regular school. I want to play sports. I want to be on the football team and the track team, which I was, and just go to a regular school. So I spent the next 4 years. I didn't withdraw completely from entertainment because I would do stage plays and personal appearances during the summer. And then when I got out of high school, I spent 6 years in the Air Force and Air National Guard. And in some ways that also limited my acting because I always had to have, the official, even in the last 3 years in the National Guard, I had to have my hair cut real short, and that's when everybody's hair was long. So everybody knew I was either a policeman or in the military. And then, I'd gotten honestly a lot of money from Leave It to Beaver, and it was suddenly given to me when I was 21. And I said to myself, I need to figure out what to do with this. So I became a banker, and I worked as a loan officer and things like that in the bank. And then I went into real estate.
This is after college, right? This is after Berkeley.
Right, after Berkeley, and then
I
got the offer for Leave It to Beaver, and I started back into acting.
So in your, let's say, early 20s, I'm trying to go in the period between the Air Force and Berkeley, or when you are freshman at Berkeley. Did you start having a normal, social life with the college crowd, or were you still being invited to Hollywood parties and mingling with celebrities?
Well, not so much while I was at Berkeley because it was too far away. But I mean, I was always invited, and I was always invited to the Oscars, the Emmys, and a lot of different parties for people, and they were fun. But I mean, that was even when I was in high school. I knew I was in a fraternity, so I was actually the social director for the fraternity because I could go into all the different fraternities, especially sororities, and invite them over for parties and things like that. So I was the social director.
Perfect man for the job.
I was the man for the job because everyone knew me, and but I just had a really good time. I had never been to school with other people because when I went to high school with other people, but in junior high and elementary school, I had a private tutor. And then when I went to Notre Dame, it was an all-boys school. So suddenly I went to Berkeley. I was suddenly surrounded by a lot of very beautiful women and a lot of very smart men, and just had a really good time. And I'd been in the Air Force, so I knew my way around a little bit more than a lot of people that were, say, a freshman. I was about 3 years older than they were, almost 4 years older. So I was, a little more sophisticated and knew, not a man of the world, but knew a lot more about the world than somebody just coming up to Berkeley that was a freshman.
So, have you been on an animated show? Have you been on I don't know, The Simpsons and things like that?
No.
And how about? Go ahead.
I did a small thing, but it was only like 2 or 3 lines on a South Park where I walked into a room, did a few voiceovers for a different, and I don't even know what episode it was on, but they just called up somebody thought it'd be funny to have the beaver on it for some reason.
That was my next question. Voiceover work in general, narration, commercials. Is your voice in some other?
I've done commercials, for Ford and Chevrolet and Purina and a lot of different things. And that's how I actually started when I was 2 years old, was basically doing modeling and commercials. I used to go on to the Ed Wynn show when I was 2 years old, and I would walk across the stage, and he would be doing his monologue, And they said, that man out there, and I knew him, I talked to him, he says, I knew he's a really nice guy. He's going to say, go away, kids, you bother me, but don't go away. And he told me, I'm your friend, this is part of acting. And I said, okay. And he'd say, go away. And I'd say, no, man, you have to do a commercial for pet milk because and it was baby formula at the time. Pet canned milk was also baby formula. And he'd finally say, okay, I'll do your commercial, just don't bother me anymore. And then I'd give him the script, and he'd read the script and say, this is the best thing for children, pet milk. And then I'd take my little bottle and walk off in diapers and with 6 guns and a cowboy hat.
What is that we've looked for and we can't find? Was Edwin a live show?
Yes, it was. Every once in a while, many, many years ago, I've seen it on the internet. Some people, have, I don't know what they call them, but they've not taped it, but they've done something with it. But every once in a while, you can see it. It's not very clear. In fact, if I didn't know it was me and I was doing that part, I wouldn't even know it.
A couple of your later commercials, both were cereal. There was the cornflakes, where you guys were on the cornflakes box, you and Tony. And then you also did with Barbara Billingsley, Oatmeal Crisp back in the...
Right. In fact, on the first one, we were the first actor ever to be on a cornflake box. That was quite an honor.
And then,
it was always a sports figure. They had people on it, but they always sports figure. We're the first. I don't know if we're the only or not because I don't check it that often. But we were the only people that weren't sports figures that were on their cereal.
And then you also did the Oatmeal Crisp with Barbara, in the early '90s, which was kind of
that's when we were doing the new Leave to Beaver.
That was a really cool one.
We heard that you were involved in the making of some sort of Christmas movie about the real Von Trapp grandchildren. Did that get completed? Whatever happened to that?
It never got completed. We filmed it, but who knows? When you're an actor, you don't get all the inside information. So,
but you do know for a fact that it didn't get.
I don't know for a fact anything, because as soon as I told you that, somebody will write you and say, how could he say that? Because I know I saw it here, there, or the other place, but I never saw it, is all I can tell you. But, a lot of times that happens. People run out of money, especially, it costs a lot of money to film it, but it costs a lot more money to edit it and then get it and sell it to somebody. So a lot of times they just sit in the vault sometimes for many, many years.
Yeah, and don't get distributed. We know that in that era, when you were in the Beaver, your contract didn't say that you were going to get lifetime residuals. But we are wondering
But just so you know, that wasn't just for Leave It To Beaver. That was a union law. You could only get residuals for 6 years. And that's not just me. That's anybody that was in any series during that time.
Okay. We're wondering about if they manufacture merchandise with your face, with
yes,
young Beaver's face.
No, that's a different contract, and that you get paid if they do it. But I'll be honest with you, it's very hard to tell, because how do you know whether something was made this month or 6 years ago? And people will just say, oh, it's old inventory or whatever.
But it can't be old inventory from the 50s.
Well, you'd be surprised. I mean, they're
like the people making, I don't know, T-shirts or...
T-shirts, yeah. Well, they just go to the internet and they grab a picture, and there's some that are Universal, but I mean Universal says that they would find these people and get the money, but who knows? I don't think they bother. It's to get a high-powered attorney to look it up and find these people and sue them, and then they just disappear.
All right, we're reaching about almost the final section. But before we do that, fans would like to hear about the upcoming cruise event. Can you tell us what's going to be the experience like, besides taking their picture with you, getting your autograph, and the rest of the former child stars?
Well, it won't be just me. That, I think, will be a big thing. Tony Dow will be there. Paul Peterson from the Donna Reed Show. Kathy Garver from Family Affair. Stanley Livingston from My Three Sons. It goes from Los Angeles to Catalina Island to Ensenada, Mexico. You'll have plenty of time with, of course, Tony and me and all those people that I just read off. We'll have Q&A sessions where we'll talk about the shows, all those different shows. There'll also be individual photo ops for them where they can, either go on tours with us. And what I mean by tours, we'll go into different places that the ship stops along the way and go into a lot of the shops. And of course, we'll be having the luxury of having the people that run the thing to tell us that this is the good restaurants, and we'll go there and have restaurants, and these are the better, how shall I say it? I don't want to be rude, but places that they don't rip you off down there when you're buying things.
Correct.
And Tony Dow, who grew up on Catalina Island, we're going to stop there for a day, and he's going to show all of Catalina because his parents own property over there. In fact, when we were doing the original Leave It To Beaver, that's where he would live during the summers, and he still has houses there. So he's very well known there and knows that very well. And then we go on to Ensenadas, Mexico, and there'll be gourmet meals and photo ops and Q&A sessions. And it's called, you can go on the internet to www.childstarscruise.com, or you could go on the phone for an 800 number to 800-273-7607. And it'll just be a really good time, and you'll get to see, as I say, all these different people from different shows and ask them questions, and we'll just have a good time and have a lot of good food, because I don't know if you've ever been cruising, but the food is absolutely delicious.
So I hear. Have you ever been part of a celebrity-type cruise like this where you get to interact with fans?
I haven't been one like this where there's many people. I've done several cruises. I just love cruising because, it's just fun. And since I've been to some of these places, now Tony Dow will be the expert on Catalina because, as I say, he's lived there since he was a child, and his family had a house there, and he still does. So he knows all the ins and outs. But, we'll be going to Ensenada, and Tony and I have both been there, so we know about, the good places to go where you don't get ripped off, and the good places to buy different, things that you might want to bring home to celebrate your trip.
That sounds fantastic. Sounds like a great time. I think a lot of the fans might take the opportunity to take a vacation and join you guys. We are trying to emulate Mr. Larry King here, and he has a section in his brand new show called If You Only Knew.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to do rapid fire questions. You
Sure.
can do a one-word quick answer, or you can do a long answer if you want, or you can even say pass
Okay.
if you don't want to do it. First question, do you have a secret talent that no one knows about?
Well, I play guitar, but a lot of people know about it because I've done records, so that would probably be the most secret one. I haven't done a record in a long time. I do play guitar. I used to play with a folk group, so it's mostly folk. It's not a lot of rock and roll, but I had a really good time doing it. It's something I enjoyed.
Perfect. Do you have a guilty pleasure?
Probably candy. I like cookies and candy, so I have a sweet tooth. I have to watch my weight very much, so it's not anything I can indulge very often, but it's something I really like licorice. So I got that from when I worked with Bob Hope on Seven Little Floys while I was eating licorice. I'd never had any before that show. My mom was more of a sea, and parents were more of a See's candy people, so I developed on that movie a taste for licorice, and I've always liked black licorice ever since then.
What is the strangest job, if any, that you've ever had?
Well, I used to be a gunfighter. And you'll say, what do you mean you were a gunfighter? I used to work, there are places across the United States that are like, and I just tell you this because maybe more people know what I'm talking about by saying this, Knott's Berry Farm, and they have gunfights. And so I was always lucky enough, and I wanted to be with the bad guys. So I would go, and every day, I think it was 8 or 9 times a day, we would rob the bank and rob the livery stable and get the horses out and ride into town and ride out of town, and then we'd have a big shootout with the sheriff, and I would always get shot in front of an audience. I mean, the people would line the side of these little frontier towns, and they always had a fort, and it was a lot of fun. That's how I said that was my summer vacation, and I got paid for it.
That was a fun and weird job, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was actually it was a little weird, but it was just like acting. I mean, it was no different than being an actor, and I'd sign a lot of autographs and meet a lot of very nice people.
Wonderful. What is the biggest risk you ever took?
Let's see, the biggest risk? Can't really think of any risks I've ever taken. I'm kind of, I'm a philosophy major for Berkeley, so I use a lot of logic, and I usually don't take risks. I mean, if I think something's too risky, I walk away.
More analytical that way.
I've invested a lot of money, and so I've learned that I don't manage risk well. If it's too risky, I just say I think I can get along without that.
Perfect. Best advice you ever got?
Never give up. If you want something, go after it, and never give up.
Worst advice you ever got?
You're a big star, and everyone loves you.
And you can do no wrong.
You can do no matter what you do, it'll be right. No, that's not true.
Best compliment that you have received?
When I was on Broadway, people came over to me, and I had done film and movies and things like that. But to be on Broadway and people say you're one of the best actors I've ever seen, or I've really enjoyed you on Broadway, that was something. Because for an actor, that's like the pinnacle.
That counts. Who's your dream, or who is or was your dream co-star?
It would depend, because I always that sets me back to my directing. I'm also a member of the DGA and I'm a director, so it would depend on the part. I always liked Raquel Welch. In fact, Tony Dow basically stand-in, but then he became Raquel Welch's manager, and so I knew her as a child, and she was just a very nice person. Now she was way too old for me, but that doesn't mean I didn't have a crush on her.
She was beautiful, and still is. Who would you trade places for a day?
Who would I trade places for a day? Let's see. Maybe the King of England. That might be nice, or the King of someplace.
Mm-hmm. Person, alive or dead, you would take to lunch, and why?
Albert Einstein, and ask him questions.
And how do you spend your downtime these days?
Well, I do have downtime, but not a whole lot of it. I'm actually keep very, very busy. I have a beautiful wife and grandkids, and we do a lot of babysitting. So our lives are a lot of socializing and going out and meeting people and just having a good time.
Something you're terrible at that you wish you were better at?
Terrible at that I wish I was better at. I'm terrible at a lot of things, but I just go ahead and do them anyway. So maybe keeping up with friends. I have so many friends that it's hard to keep up with all of them, and I always wish that I did that better and called them more often or was more sociable with them. But there's just so many of them that people go, "You haven't called me in a long time." I go, "Oh yeah, I guess I haven't."
That's a good answer. What's on your bucket list?
Oh, I think I want to go. I'd like to travel the world, but some of the things I want to see are especially the East and the pyramids, and I've been to Europe. I also want to go to Asia. So my wife and I are planning a trip sooner or later there, and so that's kind of on our bucket list. And see the pyramids and maybe go to around the world and see China and stuff like that.
What countries have you been?
Well, I've been to pretty much all of Europe. I was on a dating game, and that's how it started. I went to England, and then after that was their part of it was over. I traveled through England a lot. I've been to France. I've been to Germany. I did a Rhine River cruise with fans, so that was kind of fun. So I've seen a lot of Europe. Of course, that's like saying the United States. Well, I've been to California and New York. I've been all over the United States. I haven't been all over Europe, so there's always more I could go back to see. But I'm kind of now looking towards the Far East and Japan and China.
Very good. What do people get wrong about you?
I don't think they get much wrong about me. A lot of people sometimes say, do you talk to fans? Well, like they'll walk up to me and say, "Hi, I know who you are." I say, "Oh, hi, how are you?" And they, "Do you talk to fans?" And I'm thinking, gee, I don't know. Why wouldn't I? Why do you think you're a person I wouldn't want to talk to? But, I think that's I like my fans, and I have a really good time dealing with them. So it's always nice, and they always have nice things to say, and they always have interesting questions. Why did this happen? Well, because that's the way the show was written that week.
What is something you long believed to be true and realized wasn't? Now, there's a philosophical question for you.
Probably that life gets easier. Life is something that you go through, but every time you think you have it made, something happens, and it's not usually that bad, especially in my life. A lot of people have had a lot worse things happen, but I've had a very excellent life, and I've had a lot of fun living it. But I'm so lucky, I think, is probably what makes me the happiest. I'm lucky to have had all the people I've met in my life and all the things I've been able to do, and I just wish everybody could have a life as good as mine, but I know most people don't.
All of us wish we were you, Jerry. A fan who is a fellow veteran is asking, what was your MOS, military occupational specialty?
I was 702, which I worked in wing headquarters, and I was an aide to a major who was 4-star general's aide. So I did a lot of typing, and we flew all over inspecting troops, and I had to always make sure that everything was. I was like a senior travel agent or something like that, and I had to make sure that everybody knew he was coming and everything was set up, and it was like being an executive secretary basically.
Okay, what do you miss about the 50s and 60s?
It's not like I miss honestly anything, because things I don't think have changed that much. I mean, I still have a lot of my same friends. Sadly, a few of them have passed away, but not very many, luckily. I think the 50s were a fun time. I have more fun now because there was a lot more things that are available to me. In the 50s, I couldn't go to a lot of, restaurants or bars or different places that I can go to now. I can also meet a lot more people now. As a child, there's not that many places that you can go, that you can go a lot more places as an adult and meet people that are very interesting and have conversations with them. So I'm very happy with my life now, and I always have been. Each, portion of my life has been very, very different, and each one has been very exciting, and I liked it a lot.
And what do you not miss about the 50s and 60s that are glad to leave behind about that era?
Well, I think a lot of the 50s and 60s were, there was a lot of people living very hard lives by their own choice, but, I saw a lot of friends of mine and people that I knew that, could have done a lot better and got caught up in things. So a lot of them came back, but some of them never did. So it was a fun life, but people found out that when you live hard, it's hard to come back.
What is your worst habit?
My worst habit.
Or you could say a weird habit.
I should have my wife on the phone.
Teresa will tell us.
I don't think I have any weird habit. I don't. I lead a fairly normal life. I don't think I really. My worst habit, my wife might tell you, is I guess I snore at night sometimes, but I don't ever hear it, so it doesn't bother me.
And all that news watching that you do.
All that news watching I do makes me snore. Never. I'm always awake for the news.
What time period would you like to travel to?
Probably the future. I mean, I think that would be the past. Not that I wouldn't want to travel there, but I know what it'd be. The future, I think, would be more exciting because it'd be all new. But I wouldn't if only given the choice of the past. I think I would like to have lived in the medieval times. That I know would have been a lot tougher life, but I think it would have been very interesting.
And what person from history would you like to portray in the theater or in a movie?
Maybe Kennedy. People have always told me that I look a lot. In fact, when I went to Hyannisport when I was much younger, I actually got into the compound, and people thought I was a cousin, not a Kennedy, but a Kennedy cousin. And I walked into the cousin. All of a sudden, the guard came up and said, "Wait a minute, what?" And I told him who I was. And he said, "Well, we thought you were one of the Kennedys. They're not allowed in here."
That's nice. And what actor would you think would you like to play you if they made a movie about you?
I have no idea. I wouldn't even have the foggiest. There are so many good actors out there that I would let the the talent agents and people bring them up. But I hope they're somebody that at least looks a little like me. I know I've seen so many shows where people that I've known have had other people play them, and I'm thinking, that looks nothing like them. They don't talk like them. They don't look like them. How did they pick that person?
Yeah, something we should all be paying more attention to.
Oh, probably the government, but it doesn't really do much good. But you always have to watch out for the government to see what they're doing.
And how?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
What is a current trend that you wish would go away?
I hate to tell you, but trends don't bother me because if I don't like them, I don't follow them, and I don't care if other people do if they want to waste their time.
Correct. I could do with that, all the beards that all the men are growing these days.
Yeah. That doesn't bother me. If they're that lazy, I don't have a thick beard, or I'd probably have one.
What is a food that you can't stand and refuse to eat at all costs?
Now, you'd think I'd say Brussels sprouts because that's what the Beaver did on the show. But there's almost no food that I don't like. I don't like really spicy foods. But that would just be any genre of food that was real spicy. I don't like hot food that I eat and it burns my mouth. They say, oh, yeah, just have a drink of water. No, I don't want anything that burns my mouth, so I have to drink water.
Same here. What's your favorite thing about having been the Beaver?
Probably the people that I've got to meet, especially people that, and I'm not trying to be whatever. I'm not trying to be like above other people, but people that other people have not had a chance to even talk to. I've had long conversations like with Bob Hope, Alan Ladd, Alfred Hitchcock. I sat on Alfred Hitchcock's lap. How many actors can say that? Oh, I guess a few females, but not many males. But I've just known people all my life, and people readily accept me that other people find maybe not standoffish, but I mean scientists that I've met and different people my whole life because I grew up in their living room, and a lot of them just feel like I'm somebody they know, even though I know that they don't know me. They think they do, and I make friends with them, and they're usually very nice people.
Are there any personal appearances that are coming up or that are in the works other than the cruise?
You know what? I'm going to put my wife on at the end, and she can tell you all about that because she's the one that really handles all that. So I don't even know. She just says, "Oh, Jerry, this week, make sure you don't do anything on that day because we're leaving." I go, "What? Okay."
Right now, Jerry is going to be doing an appearance at a high school reunion in Cincinnati next month. That's not an appearance that, is open to the public, obviously. He's doing that. And then, of course, the cruise in December. And we're working on a couple things for October, November that haven't quite gelled. But everyone can go to Jerry's homepage on his website, and that's where we post his upcoming appearances. And that's www.jerrymathers.com. And we keep that pretty updated. So had a lot this year, and like I said, it's a little bit quiet right now, but we're working on October, November, and certainly for next year.
Well, we certainly hope you make it back to the Midwest sometime soon.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of cities that, I know a lot of people ask for cities, and there's certain ones that we really pay attention to, so we're looking for those kinds of events in those cities so he can see as many people as possible. And we appreciate all of the fans' interest in meeting Jerry and, of course, Tony when he's available. So just to know that they really appreciate the fans coming out, and it's a really great win-win for everybody.
Absolutely. New Jersey is another one, too. That's where Rusty Stevens resides, and I don't know, Tony's been in contact with him. I got to be honest. When I was first notified that he was around, and well, not that he was around, but that this gentleman in the group knew him. I got to be honest. I was a little skeptical, and he wanted me to try to find a way to get in contact with Tony in particular, and I didn't really know how to do that. But luckily, we were able to do it. But yeah, definitely. If sometime in the East Coast, he's He's around. We found the lost Larry Mondello.
Right. Well, Jerry and Tony did Chiller 2 years ago, so maybe at some point we'll make our way back that way, because that was a really fun show to do, and certainly, we'll look for things that were on the East Coast for sure.
On behalf of all the fans, because we get about 100 or so requests every day. Okay. We're in the 13,400 people mark, I believe.
I find that amazing. Not that it's a wonderful thing, but I just find it amazing. Thank you for all the hard work.
Yeah, and the moment people join and make their first post on the little Facebook page, they say, the cast and the show and Jerry have brought me so much joy over the years. They made my childhood more bearable if they didn't have a good one, or they gave me something to relate to. They still give me laughs if I've had a stressful day at watch. All these things that I know you hear a lot, and we just want to put it here on the record to say thank you and to say how lucky we are to have you.
I had more fun doing it than you have watching it over and over again. So, it was a very good part of my life and something I'm very proud of, but it was also a lot of fun.
Thank you very much for your time. I wanted to say in the beginning of the interview, it was very nice seeing you and Tony last weekend, being able to sit down and chat for a while. It was a really good time, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you. It was. It's always nice to meet people like you that are interested in the show, and I know for myself that, you always have questions that you keep thinking, if I can only ask this one, and, you got a chance, and if you have any, just give me a call and we'll answer them if I can.
That sounds great. Well, thank you both for your time. I really appreciate doing it. Yeah.
Anything else comes up, just give us a call.
Thank you, Brian and Maria, and all of your moderators for doing all your hard work. We do see the pages. Jerry travels a lot, so we're not certainly every day, but we do keep our eye on what you guys are doing, and we think you're doing a fabulous job.
Absolutely fabulous.
Thank you to all the fans who have joined both of the fan club pages. We really, really appreciate you.
Well, that was just absolutely fabulous. I just want to thank again Jerry and Teresa for their time. It was an absolute blast, and thank you for giving up so much time in your evening. We went over 2 hours, so that was great. So to the fans again, if you have not yet, check out my other Facebook page, the new Leave It To Beaver / Still the Beaver, and learn more about the new series that was done in the 1980s and get to know that. It was a wonderful show. And thanks to Scott Hetrick, who is also a member of the group, you can view the majority of the first season on his YouTube page. Check it out, and I think you'll enjoy it. And that'll be it for tonight. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on the page.